Excellent.
Hello.
Hi, Holly. Hi, Laura. Okay, so let's call to order now that we have a quorum, the agenda for the November 3rd organizational meeting of the Vermont Community Broadband Board. Members in attendance, we have Brian, Laura, Holly, and myself. Dan is supposed to join, but he's not on yet. We now have a quorum. Christine from staff, we have Christine, we have Rob, we have Stan, Melissa. Do we have Adam?
We don't have Adam, I don't think. Oh, yeah, we have Adam. Adam's here.
Okay, hi, Adam.
Good afternoon.
Karen?
Yes,
Lucy
Karen's here.
Rogers. Hi, Karen.
So we got the
Lucy
full staff.
Rogers. Okay,
Kristen's here as well, Kristen Bringa. So
excellent. So let's get started. I'm going to kick this off. This is an opportunity for us as a board to reflect with staff. And one of the things that I want to just start off with is recognition of how far we have come since August of 2021, this VCBB together and had our first kickoff meeting. That was only 15 months ago. And I'm just incredibly impressed with how far we've come. We started with two staffers, Christine and Rob only, to accomplish things and get things done. And I think as we move forward and we talk about things, I just really want to reflect on that, where we've come from. We are now up to 7 full-time staff members. Is that correct, Christine?
Yep, that's correct.
And I applaud Christine for making that happen in this labor market. It's incredible that we have 7 people, to be honest with you. We've doled out $113 million from the Vermont Community Broadband Board initiative. That's pre-construction, that's construction and pre-buys of equipment. 113 million, again, in 15 months. I really want to kind of put a pin in how far we have come and really applaud that and champion those accomplishments. We're starting now to see the fruits of our labor pay off with miles of fiber being installed. We have equipment in storage in hand. We're able to start building and making connections. And again, I want to put a pin in that we have a lot to applaud and a lot to cheer about. As we move forward, I see Dan has just joined us. Hi, Dan.
Sorry for being late.
We'll make a note of it. As we move forward, this is a time to sit back and say, okay, it's always good to catch your breath and say, okay, now got 15 months to reflect on, and we can take a breath. What can we do to plan for the future to hopefully streamline, improve things? And we were waiting for the first few minutes. Christine made a good point that you need problems to create solutions. And I don't look at the past as necessarily a problem, but I don't also shy away from problems, difficulties coming up, because that does lead to improvement. I look at our parking lot. We were trying to make sense of tracking issues, and we created the parking lot. And the parking lot is in our board packets every board meeting. It's a time to look back to see what's been accomplished, what's on the list. If it hasn't made the parking lot, we have an opportunity to say, hey, that item's not on there. Let's get that on. Budgets. We created a major budget to take a look at where we're at and plan for the future. The dashboard. I really wanted to call out the dashboard. I think that's a phenomenal product, and I really like seeing that because that's a quick way to check out where we are, where we have come, and all the funding opportunities that we have secured for the VCBB so that we can allocate out dollars. There's a lot of tremendous things that have been accomplished. I want to congratulate Christine and staff for all those accomplishments. It's really an incredible feat that we have done.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That said, there's always room for improvement. There's always an opportunity to do things differently and move forward. And one of the things that I would like to talk about as a board, I got to find the agenda here so I don't go off script too much here, is what we can do as a group to make our process more streamlined, more efficient. The first thing that we have our items to talk about are goals for the organization. I don't want us to get bogged down in trying to set policy today or debate particular individual issues, but it is important for us to have goals and reach opportunities for us for the future of where do we want to head. So I want to open it up with that and get feedback from the rest of our board members and for staff. And with that, let's just take a pause and just get some reactions from the board. Anybody have any comments? Reflections that they want to add?
Patty.
Laura?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I have a question, and, this is more to the question of our mandate. I'm not sure, something that I've been bringing up, what what that is. I'm not sure if you are talking about the same thing here in terms of goals.
One of the things that I would like to do is lay out, looking around here. We have had a couple of board meetings where we've had some unclearness about what our goal is, like basically like a mission statement. What is our mission? What is our directive from Act 71? That is something that I want to tackle. I don't necessarily want to tackle it in this meeting, but I want to put that on the list of things to do. That we do talk about that in more detail, give us time at a full board meeting to talk about what exactly are the directives, goal of the VCBB, so that both staff and board members are crystal clear on what that is.
Yeah, so that was my question, Patty. That was my understanding that was not something you wanted to take up today, and so I wasn't clear on when you were asking about goals. I just wanted to make sure I was clear that was not getting clarity around objective of Act 71 and 79.
One of the things that I would like to leave space on are regular meetings each month or however often we meet is to have goal discussion. We have talked in the past about not having policies done, not having goals done. This is an opportunity for us to sit back and say, let's make that a priority and let's put it space on the agenda each meeting that we talk about what policies we need and we start to unravel that and we start to address that.
Okay, so I do have a couple of suggestions. I would love us to set a goal that we establish some communication policy, maybe with the board and procedures, and from staff to board, what that is, what the expectation is, when those types of communications will happen. Throw that out there.
Okay. Yeah, let's add that to the list.
Yeah, thinking about things like press releases, thinking about things like grant agreements or grant proposals or partnerships, how those things, how the board hears about them, when the board hears about them, why the board hears about them. I'd like us to have a conversation about that so that we're all kind of on the same page.
Okay, so it's almost like a what is in the purview of the board and what is in the purview of staff to carry out.
I mean, maybe, but I mean, it's for me, like, I don't want to be, nitpicking through grant agreements, or not grant agreements, grant proposals or applications. I'm not saying the right word when we are seeking different funding, but I also don't want to be the last group that receives it. And I do think that the board needs to have a high level sense of the obligations that we are signing on to when we are seeking different types of grants, who the partners are. And so that's that type of thing. Press releases, again, I feel like the board should receive those in advance of the press. That might be, an hour before, 30 minutes before. That's more along the type of thing, making sure that the board is informed in a time and manner that allows us to all be part of the same team when we're talking about projects. And, to that end, I would say, also the CUDA, as a whole, contemplating how we dial, how and when we include the CUDA as part of that.
Okay. And again, I don't want to solve all these issues today. So let's make notes of them, put them on the board, so to speak, kind of like a board policy parking lot, goals parking lot, to address each of these items that are raised. Holly, I see that you're talking, but you're muted.
So who, in a normal meeting, we might have various people who have been assigned to take minutes. Who is taking minutes for this meeting?
It's
Chris, go ahead,
it's
Alyssa.
being recorded, and I usually take the minutes, so I will go back and follow up. I'm taking notes, but yeah, I officially do the minutes after the meeting.
There
Right,
you
that's
go.
what I thought.
Minutes. We will have meeting minutes from this meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, you won't, Alyssa keeps the meeting minutes. That's the point.
All right.
That you should never have to think about.
Patty, Stan has his hand up.
Dan?
I just wanted to make a point of procedure that since this is an open meeting, we should leave time at the end for public comment. That's a requirement in the statute. And I didn't see that on the agenda.
Okay, let's leave roughly 10 minutes at the end. Okay. Again, today's meeting is not meant to solve everything. It's meant more of a structural content. What changes do we want to make on a forward-going basis so that we can improve things? And what I've put out on the agenda is goals of the organization. What is working? What can we do better? And I want to look at that, wear that hat throughout this discussion, whether it's in this particular area, but in other areas. Okay, we want to reinforce what's working and identify what we can do better for improvement. Not meant to solve everything, so let's not unpack everything in great detail. I see Brian's hands up.
So can we, I guess at a high level, I think the way my view is the way we should focus on improving ourselves going forward should somewhat be based on what we see the work is going to be going forward. So I feel like we've gotten through the initial phase of rapid fire applications and grant assessment and awards given, right? So the pace of that has slowed down. And, whether it was due to time or focus or whatever, we talked early about, hey, before we get into that rapid fire period, it would be great to have some common understandings on objectives and criteria and some policies and all that. But we never really got to that. We just we worked our way through that sprint of applications and funding the best we could. And, in hindsight, I think we did pretty well. Not perfect, but I think we did pretty well. But to me, and please someone push back if you disagree, that phase seems to be waning. And so I guess I'm curious in thinking about what's the next phase we're entering and going to look like, and what requirements is that going to place on us? Is the next phase a big focus on external grant opportunities that staff has been pursuing and kind of providing oversight to that? Is it more about putting into place tracking mechanisms to make sure the grants that have been awarded remain on track and are hitting their milestones? And if not, what remediation needs to be happening, et cetera? because I think the work ahead of us is different than the work that's behind us. And so that should guide what we as a functioning board should be focused on.
Thank you. That's well said, Brian.
I'd like to add,
Dan? Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
please. In addition, where we are through that rapid fire and where the staff is in terms of its staffing has also changed. And these two things have vastly improved where overall the program is. I just want to recognize that the staffing has come up substantially. So I think there's a lot more capability there that the 2 week or 1 week at one point we were on weekly meetings. We're in such a good place, or there's an opportunity to really step forward deliberately.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Holly?
I don't know how to talk about this topic until we talk about the scope of our various roles. And so we've done a lot of stuff, but it's been a lot like flying while we're building the airplane. And I think we have an obligation to go back and analyze our work and figure out where we have been and where we are. And I saw the calculator that staff did as a way of looking at standardization of what our work product looks like. So we should be able to benchmark that work in a way that says we've been consistent and we know what the outcome is, or or move towards that level of consistency in terms of what we see. And I think I don't know where you're seeing the dashboard, Patty. But I haven't seen a budget, actual against budget for months. And so I think we should set as a board what our baseline communications will be and agree with staff about not only what they are, but what the goal of them is and how and when they should be delivered.
So a budget to actual on every report or quarterly?
Whatever the board wants. Quarterly is fine with me, but I also think we should benchmark CUD's spend against grant and CUD's allocation against grant. I mean, there's a few benchmarks that would help. And I as a board member have no idea what the relative rate of service will be for these CUDs. And since we're charged with affordability, sorry, I'm going to beat my drum. It bothers me that we've done funding without checking or logging what the benchmark base rate for service is against some kind of standard. So those kind of operational things I think would be useful. I think the other policy area where we're sort of a little open is just simply, what the expectations of us as board members are. And I don't think we've really talked about that. And I see on the agenda, we're going to talk about our own performance obligations or measuring our performance as a board. And gosh, we've been through bucket loads of stuff. And the amount of money spent is heroic, but frankly, I don't take great comfort in how much money we can spend how fast. That's not my measure of comfort.
Thank you, Holly.
Thank you.
Anybody else at this point in time? All right, some really good comments were floated in there, and I think all of those can be used to frame where we're headed into the future here.
Patty,
Yes.
sorry, I was muted before. I had one other item. And that would be just around scheduling. It would be great to get that kind of locked down, maybe in an annual, in some sort of a standardized calendar. I think we are, hopefully, we need to be out of the emergency kind of posture. And I think we can be. So, I mean, we have enough staff that VCUDA is mature enough. The CUDs are mature enough that, folks, knowing that there's a meeting coming up, rather do agenda shuffling than, scrambling for meetings. So,
Yeah, let's talk about that, because I think part of our timelining and how we move forward as a board will help us get more efficient, quite frankly. I really strongly want to move to once a month and have a very structured agenda in our meetings going forward. And I want to just roll out that concept to the full board at this point. But what I'm finding is we periodically have meetings that there's not really a lot to talk about, and there's kind of like fill work. Instead, that takes staff a shitload of time, if I can be blunt. And I just don't want to go through that exercise to have a meeting because it was on the calendar. So I really want to go to once a month, and we have very productive meetings, substantially, content meetings, and get less bogged down with just general informational stuff. I see some head nods there.
A 4-hour meeting is, in my experience, kind of unprecedented unless you have a very deep and detailed agenda. But there is a downside here that I want to draw your attention to. We as a board, we don't live and breathe this stuff every day like staff does. And so how are we going to keep ourselves fresh or keep the context in place in order to have just 12 meetings a month? So I think this comes to the planning process and the communication, like the dashboard idea and that sort of thing. How can we keep our tools in front of us so that we can prepare and be ready and don't lose the thread? That's my concern.
Yep, understood.
Yeah, I would love to see us have a goal of getting to once a month. I know that we do have some light meetings. That's okay. I would rather, as we're trying to get ourselves kind of, in our next phase of organization, I'd rather see us keep the 2 meetings and have a goal of, can we get down to 1 for March or February, so that we're not scrambling for a meeting. So,
well, I'd like to hear from staff what the downside of that is. I mean, right now we're out of construction season. So it used to be, oh my gosh, we have to get this money approved because we're in construction season.
Yeah.
But how many CUDs do we have that haven't drawn pre-construction grants, and how many CUDs do we have that don't have some money to work with such that we're on a tear to get it to them?
Yeah.
And then I guess that's the next question is, how do we need to prepare for the next construction season, or is everyone all set?
And, I would also say we have also found ourselves in meetings where staff is telling us we just don't have time to keep you apprised of, what we're doing. And that is not like and now with more staff and as we're looking at reorganizing, so that's not okay, but we've all been moving together. And so I think it's going to take us a little bit of time to kind of adjust ourselves. So again, I'd like to keep the 2 meetings on the books rather than scrambling to find some, with a goal of getting to 1 meeting, which I think we should be able to do.
So I've heard a request to have staff comment on the idea of once per month and just this general concept of fewer meetings.
Yeah, I'm happy to make some comments on this.
jump in.
First of all, I just want to comment on a couple things that were said. First, we are at a different staff level. We do have the capacity, and the timing of this is really good. And we should change our processes and how we work with the board. And Holly's point about the budget, really important. In fact, we will have the state come and present at the next meeting about how this whole thing's working, and we will fix that. So capacity is no longer a reason. So let's get that out of the way. Secondly, we do have a number of CUDs who have not been grant funded yet. That would be EC Fiber, Lamoille, Northwest, and Otter Creek. But let me also tell you that we spend, literally weeks and weeks and weeks working before we bring these to the board. I do think we can move to monthly meetings, and the grant approval should not. Oh, let me put it this way: the grant approval should not be a reason to have 2-week meetings, because we really need to work closely with the CUDs to get, and we're working, I won't mention any names right now, but we're working extensively with one right now to get this framed up right. We have a process in place now. As long as we all appreciate the process, the checklist, and the things we go through, and we follow that process, it's going to be easier for the board, right? We've established those processes. So as you said, we were building the plane while we were flying. Now we're kind of landed, and we can do the maintenance. So
can I ask a little question in there, Christine?
Yes.
It's really awesome to hear that you're settling into a process. And one of the things that seems right to me is if the board report could have you could have a red, yellow, green report of what applications are coming down the pike, and it would help give us notice of what's coming. But the amount of work that you're all doing is invisible to us. We suspect it, we can see the result, but we don't know what the trajectory is.
Okay, yeah, we can do that. And let me just tell you, CUDs are different levels. So what you don't see is the amount of back and forth we have to do with the CUDs in order to even get to, because my line all the time is, some of the CUDs will say, well, let's bring this forward and see what they think. No, you got to get through my filter. I mean, I think the board, I'm your executive director. You hold me accountable, right? As we move forward, I'm announcing to you that we're in a different phase. You can increase your expectations on the executive director. And we have some processes that are firm and established now. And again, you as a board may not even know what those are, right? So we do have, that well taken. So, okay, yes, of course we can do that, and we can provide you with a status and what's good. What I worry about, however, is I worry that these are public meetings, these are public forums, and I don't want to give fodder to the public because some CUDs are having more problems than others, right? Our goal is to get every CUD performing and performing well. Some CUDs, I'm even reluctant to say this publicly, but some CUDs are doing better than others, right? And we have to work with some more than others. And I've got to figure out how to put this in a positive public light so it doesn't become, oh, this CUD is doing a bad job.
Yeah, I think if I can jump in real quickly, as we move forward, and Brian alluded to this, is what does our future look like? What are the things that we have to do as a board? And I think we as a board and staff, we're going to quickly move into more of a monitoring role, and staff is going to be managing that monitoring role, and we as a board will be getting reports as to that monitoring role. I don't plan to manage it, and that's not my role as a board member. But these are things that we get to chew on going forward in terms of what comes to a board meeting. And reports in the board packet relative to how each of the CUDs is doing, like that's totally, that's appropriate. And then we can review that, read that if we have questions, ask a few questions, but I don't need to know all the details. That's what staff is in charge of. We just need to know it's being done
And what's coming.
and what's coming. Yep.
Yeah, I can see this as like a single page, with each CUD, just what they're currently working on and what you should expect to see in the next 3 months. At that kind of level would be instructive. That would be great. And I'd like to see documents as well, but those don't need to be in the packet. I'd like to have access to that kind of stuff when it's done. But yeah.
One of the things that we don't do for this board is to create a lockbox of confidential documents. And I don't know if that's possible given but they're just a repository of, we used to see the contracts. I haven't seen a contract for a long time. We used to see the application in full. I don't know that we're still doing that. So we ought to talk about what our standards and our expectations are while we're in a monitoring role. The question is, monitoring what?
Well, and I would build off of that and go back to what I said in the beginning in terms of communication. So when we are seeking, new funding opportunities and creating new partnerships, the board needs to be part of that. That's not a report that should come to the board after the fact. I believe we should have some sense of, we're going after these funds. It's this much with these partners. It's going in at this time. So that's a little bit more than monitoring that. I mean, monitoring our partnerships, monitoring our finances, I guess, our overall financial situation.
Yeah, I think a lot of the commentary leads to, and Christine, you said this well, that your role, now that you're really staffed up and you've got the last few positions that are going to be filled, Christine's role as the executive director now is to keep the board communicated to and keep us up to date on, what's going on so we don't have underlying questions. And I look at my board role as, I don't want to read somebody's application. I don't have time to read 140 pages of something. I want to read the overview, the checklist. I want to see that staff looked at that checklist, and I'm going to lean on staff and trust my staff that if you're making a recommendation to approve it, that it's been vetted and it's thorough and it makes sense. We'll ask a few questions, but I'm leaning on you to have done all that heavy lift in reviewing all the details, and that's the appropriate role for staff to do that, not a board member.
I'm in total agreement with you, Patty, but I think in order to do that, we need to set benchmarks for what the key criteria are. So the checklist is one thing. The board needs to make sure they understand the checklist. But if there's deviations from a standard, we need to be able to see those so that we know the staff has made a decision about that deviation from a standard and why.
Do you think that's not been done in those checklists?
Some of the stuff in the checklist is so vague that I question whether we as a board really know what we're reading.
All right, we'll put that off as another a different issue, a specific issue to dissect and pull back, pull the onion layers back on. That's a follow-up issue. But I think conceptually, Christine's role going forward, Christine, your role is to move into understanding what the board members need, managing us. Basically, you're babysitting us a little bit, quite frankly, and that's a good thing. We communicate with you directly, have some back and forth, and that guides what information you're bringing to us as a full board. Let staff do the work of staff. And Christine, your job is to interface with us as a board, and we get on that balanced playing field and what we need and what issues should be coming forward for next layers of things to dissect. That's how I see this unfolding.
Agreed.
Rob was so helpful in letting me know that we did not approve the agenda. So I'm going to go backtrack and put a motion on the table that we approve the agenda as posted today. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Holly. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Is anybody else hearing static, or is it just like?
I am.
Yeah, I guess it's static too.
I always thought that was
Yeah.
just the ringing in my head.
No, I think everybody muting their mics for a minute to figure out where it's coming from. Of course, somebody muted their mic and it disappeared.
I think it might be Brian.
Could be. I'm on a new audio device.
It's you, Brian.
I'm going to go on mute.
Pick a different frequency.
Yeah, it's definitely Brian. Okay, any opposed? The ayes have it, the agenda carries. I'm also going to put a motion on the table that we move to once a month meetings. And I know that there've been some discussion against that. Let's see if there is a second for that.
Starting when, Patty?
Starting in December.
Second.
Okay, there's a second. Is there further discussion? And yeah, there is further discussion. I would like to put the thumb on the scale of moving to once a month and forcing us to get the stuff done that we need to get done. And Christine and I need to start meeting more frequently about the agenda. So there should be more not back room, that sounds bad. Christine and I need to spend more time on the agenda saying this is what we should be talking about. And then any of the board members that have things that they want to talk about, let me know. And then I can bring that message to Christine and we can debate how it unfolds, where it should unfold and all that. But I would like to push now that we move starting in December to once a month. Any other discussion?
Yes. With with scheduling, kind of a calendar of what's coming up and communications, how we're going to shift communications, what the board's going to know, when the board's going to know it, being open questions. I'm concerned about taking the second meeting off the calendar. So when we have to scramble for meetings, I'd also love a standardization of how we schedule meetings. So I will vote no to start doing this in December. I would love us to get to that point where we know that what's coming during the year. We know how we're going to receive. We know what information the board wants to receive, how they want to receive it, and we've got ourselves straightened to do that. And I hear you saying that you're going to work with Christine to do that. But I mean, I think there's more board. I would like to see us hold the 2 meetings for now, even if and cancel the second one if we don't need it. But if for no other reason than not to have to go through the scramble of scheduling.
Until when, Laura? Until when?
I would say till March, or until we redecide. I am perfectly willing for us to have 1 meeting a month. What I don't want to do is get rid of scheduling 2 meetings a month. That's the different. That's what until we get ourselves organized better. Yeah, so Brian, I would like us.
So basically, Laura, you're saying keep on the calendar a placeholder. So if
Yes.
we need it, then we hold a meeting for the second.
Yes, because I don't think I think we are changing how we have things come to us, what things come to us.
Okay, Brian, you have your hand up?
I'm just Laura, is your concern for the CUDs and the CUD leadership that it's too abrupt to change from what they've been experiencing or expecting, or is the concern more from the impact on the board's effectiveness as a working body?
That's the latter.
Okay.
And, you
Yeah,
know, I would like that to be our goal, to get to one. I think we have some work to do to get to a point where, first of all, we agree on what we should have coming to us, what we should be talking about. I mean, I think there's some changes. I want to see changes myself in how some materials come to us, and when they come to us. And, you know, until we as a board decide on that, what I'm saying is I don't want to pull that second meeting off. Happy not to have it, because I don't want to scramble for scheduling, which we've been doing a lot of. So the problem I'm trying to solve right now, Brian, is not scrambling for scheduling.
okay.
Meeting. That's the problem I'm trying to solve right now.
So then because my next question to you was going to be, you know, what criteria can we establish to determine when we're ready to pivot to once a month? But it doesn't sound like that's appropriate, because you're focused on the scramble for scheduling more than like criteria to let us know that we're ready to pivot to once a month.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yes, I think that we've been kind of in an emergency. The board has been, not the board, the staff has, you know, acted in some emergency roles. Like, we got to get this to you at this time.
Yep.
You know, we have people on a time thing. We can't tell you about this thing that we're applying for because we don't have time. You know, so just, we're in a place where we can change how we do that. Let's change how we do that, with the goal of, I think if we change how we do that, one meeting a month is going to be great, and probably less than 4 hours.
Yeah.
It could be the case that we need 2 meetings a month just to get the change managed, but
Yeah, I see. Here's what I look at. If we're staying in that 2 meetings a month mode, there's not enough time for Christine and I to plan for each meeting. We're not going to get into that discipline of, okay, we've got one meeting, we got to nail it. Let's get on it and perfect it. We're going to continue to be scramble pants, crisis management mode. If we have one meeting a month, it's going to enforce discipline into our process.
I kind of concur that if staff knows and we know that, oh, well, in 2 weeks we can take it up, it changes the picture. But from an operations standpoint, Patty, I think we could set in the next 2 months we could test our plane by having a substantive business meeting once a month. And then these changes that you're talking about have to be discussed and presented at some point, like actual change of work plan or process. So that might be a second meeting in November and maybe a second meeting in December, although there's no room in anybody's calendar for 2 meetings in December.
Sure. I like that idea. I like that concept, though. I'm sorry, I see Dan's got his hand up. I like the concept of having just retaining an additional meeting to do this follow-up kind of reorganizational work that we're doing.
Okay, Dan, you have your hand up?
I have a question. It's a judgment on, this is for Christine. Is there any thought that once a month is going to be a problem for the CUDs from here forward? And what I'm trying to get at is, we went through the scrambles. It was really important to move things on fast. But my personal view on this, there shouldn't be any more scrambles from here forward. That 60 days notice is sufficient when you're asking for millions of dollars. Like, there's no surprise here. So I'm sorry, I'm probably leading, but I'm asking Christine, do you think that's a problem?
Well, let me just
Monthly?
say, you know, there's really 2 sides to the answer to that. You know, I really like this discussion about getting standard processes. Once the board, you know, this is really important work the board is doing, because we want, you know, we've kind of forced staff has forced the board which is not the way you run a board, right? The board is now, but it's because we all know why. But now it's the point where we've got to set the standard. Now, is it going to create a problem for the CUDs? Again, I go back to if we have a disciplined process, I would suggest, and by the way, I've already had problems with discussions with Rob Vietzke about this, and maybe you can have him weigh in. But, we talked about getting the board packet out, 5 working days in a week in advance, getting all these things in place. That sets us back 2 weeks, right? So we'll spend a week getting the board packet ready. If we go to a monthly schedule, we have the capacity. This gets right to what I agree with Patty saying 100%. If we have a 2-week cycle to do things properly, well, you can't have a meeting every 2 weeks, obviously, right? But I think if you build that into the schedule, and I really would, again, this has not been litmus tested with the CUDs, but Rob suggested this is how we do it, and I may be taking that suggestion as agreement, which might not be the case. So let's hear from CUDs, but I do think where you're headed is really important because timing is right, and that hopefully that describes why we need to move to a monthly meeting.
So I'm
Okay,
going
well
to
then,
go ahead, Dan.
oh,
Sorry.
sorry, then let me just follow up with then, and I'll be brief, Holly, is that we shouldn't see any more emergency requests. And just, that's a statement. Like, if you don't approve this, then I lose that. That should not exist in this world, at least from here forward, because the important decisions have been made. The construction funds, the pre-construction funds are out there. There should not be any more emergencies. And I was asking, do we see any more? But my statement is there shouldn't be any more. So thank you.
Yeah, and as we grow and get more disciplined, the requests to us will grow and be more disciplined as well. We shouldn't see scramble mode. It'll cut down on the scramble piece.
But I want to add, and Stan, this one's for you. This bud's for you. Dan, you make reference to a particular conversation that we've been having at the last few meetings about urgency and tying funds together and representations and all that sort of thing. Part of what solves this problem is if we can have a meeting and clarify roles and whose scope of authority is what. Sometimes I see staff making decisions where the board isn't informed, and I'm surprised and concerned. But sometimes I think that staff can be making decisions that are coming to us. And I think, we can probably do some work around authority and give some examples from things that we've done recently and help staff know when, we're out on an edge and we're setting new policy and we've got to have board input on the policy. But new policy also, to Dan's point, should be measured and be timely and take that time. Part of the problem is no policies.
Patty?
Right, and I absolutely agree with that, Holly. We need to spend time on policies and established goals, and we say, here's the goal. We all understand it and can live by it and have had a chance to vet it. We've just not had a chance in the 15 months to be that strategic and that systematic.
It causes me to
forward for us to do that.
It causes me to put an asterisk, though, for staff. A great practice in a board meeting is to bring up, mention, or put in the written version of the board report anomalies that have come up in the last 30 days. And that way the board has a methodology for knowing when staff decisions are out of the normal course. If there's within authority, but out of the normal course, then you have a way to communicate with the board about that.
Patty?
That's helpful. Laura, you have your hand up? Yes.
Yes. So Dan had asked that question around urgency for the CUDs. And then Christine had suggested hearing from the CUDs. I agree that we are past the emergency stage, but I know that Rob did have his hand up. I wonder if we could just hear from Rob Vietzke about.
Yeah, I was just going to give a shout out to Rob. He did send in comments, and I apologize, but I just sent those out. I didn't see them in my personal email until today, just before the meeting. I sent that out to the board, but Rob, would you mind jumping in here from Bikuda? You're on mute, Rob.
You're on mute.
Thank you. I have heard from some of the CDs that they think we still need a really urgent set of meetings. But I also hear from them that a lot of the urgency and kind of frantic activity that happens between a Friday when the board book gets published and a Monday is something we'd like to get away from. And so, the general idea here was if Patty, if you and Christine are setting the agenda well in advance, we and the staff and even sometimes you guys can have conversations to work out the edge cases and come into these meetings saying we're all on the same page. And I think there's pretty universal agreement that kind of moving the solving problems out of your meeting and into the week or two beforehand would be helpful to the maximum extent we can do it. And so, that was kind of the thinking that I put forward in the, the comments to you about this is that, I actually do think there will still be some requests for some last minute things to get added to the agenda. If there are opportunities popping up driven, like we just went through with NEK's RUS grant, that's a great opportunity. It would be fine to add that last minute to an agenda. But the bulk of the stuff, especially the policy stuff and kind of the planning for future programs and other stuff, if we got that on a longer time frame with more staff discussion with the CUDs and with you all in advance, I think that would be a great thing. So that's the general thought. I would also just highlight again, I think, Patty, I tried to say this in the cover note. It's been a great year. And so, like we could come up with 1,000 things to improve, but don't forget that.
Exactly. It's well said.
Thank you.
We have to acknowledge all that we have accomplished. We got handed an impossible job and we did it, quite frankly. So that's something to be applauded. Christine, your hands up.
Yeah, thank you. What the other request we have when we go to monthly meetings is if we could move the day away from Monday. Monday is a really hectic day for staff because, we're recovering from a lot that's happened over the weekend. So another day would be perfect. And I'm assuming we all, that's assuming that you can make the changes in your schedules.
That will be pretty problematic for me. Particularly during the legislative session when Monday is the day that we are not in session, which is half the year.
That just maybe it is what it is issues. I've got conflicts on Wednesdays and Thursdays, standing things going on.
Well, Laura may be the final point. It is. It's going to be what it is. Certainly not going to fall on the sword for that. So.
Yeah, my bias is I want to try this, and if we find it doesn't work, then we can go back to twice a month. I just really feel if we get disciplined and we do once a month, forces our hand to become more organized and become more disciplined in this process, I think we're going to have a better approach and we're going to avoid some problems. All right, we have a motion and a second on the table. It has been seconded. So is there any further discussion?
Patty?
Yes, Laura.
I'm going to vote for it. But I'm nervous. I really don't want to see us scrambling for meetings. It's driving me a little crazy when we have to do that.
I totally understand, Laura, and my responsibility is to carry this water forward and not have a leaky bucket, and I'm on it.
Okay.
All right, all those in favor of moving to once a month, please say aye.
Aye.
Effective when?
December.
The 1st of December will be a once a month meeting. Just want to be really clear.
Yeah, let's get our standing meeting. What?
The next standing meeting is
Would be
the
the 17th.
14th,
Oh, no, 14th. Yep.
and then the 28th. And based on the comments, we know that December is going to be challenging, so maybe the 28th can be our December meeting.
Oh, now you're being helpful, Dan.
I'm just
Yeah,
looking the way it's going to
ideally-
unfold.
Yeah, ideally what we do is we move to like the first Monday of the month, the second Monday of the month.
Right.
And with that becomes our, it is what it is. That's when we meet. And I'd like to propose the second Monday of the month rather than the first.
So,
Yeah, can I add here? I think, so I'm working on, you're gonna, like I say, the 14th, we're gonna be talking about budget. I've been working hard with the Department of Public Service and the administration, and I won't get into detail here, but it would be better to do the third Monday, because what they've told me is, you know, I will get the budget by the 10th of the month, but they haven't been consistent in the past on this. I'd like to have, you know, they commit to the 10th and then I commit to the board the 18th. Well, that doesn't give us time for the board packet anyway. So maybe reviewing the previous month anyhow. Sorry about that. I guess the 11th is fine. We'll just be a little behind.
Patty,
What I'd like to do is vote on the motion of once a month, and then
Yep.
afterward, let's figure out the date.
Yeah, second is fine. Never mind what I said.
All right, but let's go to the vote as once a month and not the date.
Yeah.
All those in favor, please say aye to once.
Aye.
A month.
I,
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the ayes carry. Now let's talk about when. Does the second of the month work? And this doesn't have to be a motion and a vote. This is a scheduling item. It's administrative.
Patty, the only thing I would ask us to consider is hearing from VCUDA, because I'm not sure when they have their regular meetings, but it could be that they also have them on Mondays around when we do, just to kind of block that time. So if we could just hear from Rob when they meet.
and they
Or
have
Chris-
legislators attending also.
We moved our meeting to the Tuesday after your meeting, so it should be fine.
Okay. So if we start in December and we do the second of the month, Monday, that is the 12th of December. We would continue to meet on the 14th of November, and the 28th of November would still hold. So we would not have the once a month start until December 12th.
So here's a practical question. Our first meeting on the 12th would suggest a board book dropping on the 5th. And we will have had a meeting on the 28th. You're going to have a very busy couple of weeks before you take your holiday break, Christine.
Yeah, I don't think you should change the board book till January, because we, you know, if we do need 2 weeks ahead of the board meeting to prepare, and then we're at the previous board meeting, so it's pretty.
Well, that's an idea.
Yeah. So just keep your process until January, but, you know, schedule the meeting. I mean, at some point you got to make the change, right? So the 12th, I think, is a good suggestion, but that we change process for the new year.
So say that again. I got lost in that.
Well, so the point was, you know, what we're
Let
discussing
me
here
finish,
is.
Christine.
Oh, go
Let
ahead.
me
I
try
thought
to reiterate to see if I've
All right.
got it.
Yeah.
So we're going to start with a once a month on the 12th, but the board packet won't come out until the 8th of December.
That's right. The better pack will be out the 8th of December. That's right.
Once we roll into January, then you'd want to send it out a week in advance.
Yes.
Okay. All right, I got it. I think that's administrative. I don't think we need to vote on that. That's administrative.
I have a question about the 2 remaining meetings in November. And if they're both necessary, and I mean, I would love to hear from the CUDs as well as staff.
Yeah, I'll say that we've got a grant proposal. We expect to have some grant proposals for the last meeting in November. I think the upcoming meeting, the first meeting in November, the 14th, I think it is, it's important because we're going to, we'll have guests speak. It'll be about the budget. And what's the other subject we're talking about? Rob?
On the 14th, it's the budget and from finance and management. And then the public service department is going to present the new broadband availability data and take questions and answers, which I think is key to get that to the CDs sooner than later.
Yeah, and I'm like to say the budget is my top priority right now, and I want to keep that moving. So, we've prepared the administration to come in and speak about their budget process, and then so I want that to happen as soon as possible.
Can I ask a question about that? This is not an organizational question, Patty, but just what are we seeing on the 14th? Are we seeing the proposed budget, or are we seeing?
Oh, no. You're seeing
report.
What what I've made very clear in my meeting with the administration 2 weeks ago, which they've received it well, is the state budget process will not work for this board. So the state has a set of requirements in terms of the Budget Adjustment Act and how they present things. But what's interesting is they don't include federal funds, that's the bulk of our budget, right? So what we've agreed is the VCBB is going to develop an outboard process, and that process will plug into the state's process seamlessly, right? So when we do reports, we're going to be doing 2 different types of reports, one for the board, one for the state. Been working on this for a year, so this is not. There's no way around this, and so I think the administration pretty much agreed with that, and they're going to come in and present their needs to the board, and then I'll follow on with a budget proposal for the board.
Great, thank you.
All right, we're kind of touching a few agenda items in different places here.
But we have agreed that our meeting in December is on the 12th.
Yes.
Noon to 4. We're not making shorter meetings. We're not making longer meetings.
Definitely not making longer meetings. So on our agenda, we had board packet content, and this kind of goes into this. This also addresses the once a month aspect, and some of the things that I'd like to see in the board packet on a regular basis is the agenda. The agenda has, I think the agenda is really good, and the structure of the agenda. As we move forward, I would like to leave a placeholder for policy and goal discussions, so the board can talk about those things that we need to say. We need a goal on this, with policy on that. We have time to actually do that. The other thing I see are regular budget updates, at least quarterly, maybe not every month, but at least quarterly. Here we are, budget to actual. I also have the dashboard. And that's just a one-page summary of the CUD grants as to how much we've doled out and status of the grants. So we talked a little bit about a kind of a monitoring system, and I think part of that status can move into a monitoring system. Parking lot, I'd like to see the parking lot continue. That is a very helpful piece in the board packets. The Teams links, the change that has been implemented from the last month has been phenomenal. Thank you, staff, for doing that. It was very difficult to navigate going from meeting spot to meeting spot when you had to have and manage 3 or 4 different links. So I just want to applaud staff for fixing that. And I want to put out for the board, what other meeting materials that you would know of right now would you want to see? And it doesn't mean that we can't talk about these additional meeting materials later, but if anybody has anything specific they would like to see as a standing item in the board packet, let's have a dialogue about that.
Yeah. So without any further dialogue about how we deal with these things, I would like to see, I'd like to have copies of any press releases that have gone out. And I would like to see, like a one-sheeter on any opportunities that we're pursuing, that to include who the partner, what the objective is, who the partners are, what the dollar amounts are, what we're matching or leveraging in order to try and realize that. And I'm talking about a really high level, literally one sheet.
Laura, just to be, so I'm clear, are you talking about, it sounds like you're talking about deal making. I bring to mind, the fiber purchase opportunity, or are you talking about CUD grant applications coming in?
No, yeah, I am not talking about CUD grant applications. I'm talking about the fiber purchase. I'm talking about BEAD and other things, although I would like us to have more of a discussion about those in general going forward. At a minimum, I would like us to have kind of a one-sheeter, and I think we generally do, but to include what the objective is, who the partners are, and what the dollar amount is and what's being leveraged.
And you said again, Laura, one-page summary, you're not looking for gobs of detail here, just here's what's happening. Here's what we're looking at.
Yeah, I'm really not looking even to get in there and, start making decisions. I'm just looking not to be surprised.
And and I'll reiterate that I asked that we would know what is in the hopper in terms of grant requests and what their status, where they are in incubation. I also would like, when we are considering a grant, to have some benchmarking against other grants or a standard. And that I mentioned before also, that would be something like to examine the checklist in a more, now we have a lot more information than we did when the checklist was created. And so it would be good for us to know how we've applied the checklist to others and where any individual grant falls within that. I am looking for what's our track record for consistency and what are the benchmarks. And that is something that I would think staff would want, but may not have had time to marshal. And so, I'm not trying to create, I don't want it to take a month to get ready for a board meeting. So if you have ideas, Christine, about how we can do that in a way that's consistent with how the staff needs to report these things elsewhere, or how where your benchmarking tools are, that's fine with me.
Yeah, so my response to that is, I think, again, I don't want to interfere too much with discussion of the board. I think we're going to lay this all out. We'll come back to you. We're going to try to meet this formal request of the board as much as possible. So I'll come back and tell you how we're going to do it. We don't need to discuss the word how. Right now, we're discussing what the goals are. And it's interesting. I got a thorough set of benchmarks that I use when I review these from financial benchmarks. So, that's you saw an example of that when I showed the spreadsheet in the last meeting. So yeah, I think putting those formal benchmarks in there, and we're working with one of, that's what I keep pushing the CUDs on. If their cost per mile is out of line or the cost per passing is out of line, we go back and forth with them before we bring it to the board. But I'd say, nothing I've heard. If there was anything unreasonable, I would have raised it. But I haven't heard anything unreasonable at this point. So keep going.
So Christine, what about in terms of dashboards? We spend a lot of time focusing on the money, but what about, we're going into implementation phase. So how will your dashboard or your monitoring system morph? Is it just going to be dollars drawn down, or how will you report to us compliance?
We're actually, Alyssa is actively involved with putting that dashboard in place. We've set a series of metrics for example, make ready progress. There's the make readies are critical path items. Make ready plan versus actual by CUD. We, in the dashboard that she's creating, which by the way, it's not going to be formally complete till January. But we're, it's not, we've gone one step further. Originally, we were talking about planned number of addresses connected versus actual. Well, now we're moving down to plan make ready, plan costs, and and all those steps that lead up to connection. And we'll present those metrics to the board, the proposed metrics to the board. We've already discussed this and have a plan in place, and of course the board should see it. So we could present that at the end of the November meeting. What the proposed metrics are for the board to review, so we can make sure that we've captured everything you think is important as well. I'm trying to anticipate the board's needs, the administration's needs, and the general public's needs. But you definitely should have final say.
So I assume, just looking around the screen at my fellow board members, that because of our fiduciary responsibility, we do want to get that information. We're not a regulatory body, but we should at least have awareness of grant compliance and progress, right?
Yeah, I think that's spot on. That's something that we need, but also staff needs to be doing it anyway.
Right. Okay. Is there anything, Christine, that you think we should be looking at that we're not?
Well, I think that gets to the dashboard. We'll present that to you. I think we are at the point now where we should be looking at performance measures. No question about it. And we've been doing a lot of thought, and we're ready for that. I also say we put a lot of details in that weekly update. That'll be coming out this evening. That vehicle is really to keep the board informed. So, I'll text you when it comes, when it gets sent from now on. But I just want to make sure you're reading that update, because our intent on that goes to, our intent on that that is the alignment tool of the board. You read that, and if there's things you don't agree with, you bring it up at the next board meeting. But that's, we're going to continue weekly. We do a lot of work on that weekly update.
Yeah, I love that weekly update, and I do read that. And it would be, and I don't know if others are in the same boat. If you have something that you want us to look at, just shoot out a text, say, hey, check your state email. I'm not in the state email all the time, but when you do send that weekly update, I do read those.
Are those, Christine, Patty makes a good point. Of course, those are public documents because you're sending those far and wide, right? The weekly updates, you send them within the administration stand saying no.
No, they're sent to the administration and they're sent to the board.
Okay. I thought we could use our personal emails for them, but no. Okay.
But do others have that same need to be flagged to go look?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. That's not a problem for me, because you've seen
and
it.
Christine, you've said in the past, don't respond because it becomes a meeting, and I get that. But just hey, go check your email. That's all. Just give us a nudge, give us a poke.
Yep, no problem.
Okay.
This is slightly off topic, but I really would greatly appreciate it if all of our communications came from Christine. Christine, you might be getting it from other people, but I like to know that you saw it, it's from you, or you could designate a board administrator. But sometimes it feels a bit like a free-for-all.
Oh, it has been a free-for-all.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
No
I'm glad I'm on track. But that's something to consider.
Oh, I'm okay with that. That's how I'm used to working.
What, the free-for-all?
No, 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 no. The free for all. You should know that the free. I'm uncomfortable with the free for all as well. But
Okay.
you know, it's kind of like we say, we know what we got into.
And part of that is I want to know that this is authorized by you.
Yeah, I get it. That's an appropriate expectation.
Okay, any other comments in that space? And we seem to have combined items 4 on the agenda and 5 on the agenda, but that's totally fine. And on the agenda, we have the board meetings, when and how to involve PSD staff, process review policies and programs, staff updates and reports, board frequency. I think these are all things that Christine and I will talk each meeting about, and these will all naturally come up in terms of evolving. So I don't think we need to talk about all the items listed on number 5. But are there any other things that folks want in the board meetings? And this is going to be open to board members, staff comments.
I guess I would really like a couple of things to happen. And I am going to say this knowing that I was 15 minutes late to this meeting. And I try not to have that happen, but it happens. We've got really busy schedules, but we're setting aside our time in advance. I feel the absence of my fellow board members when there's conflicts in their schedules so that they can't attend the meetings. And I don't know what we can do about it, but it matters. I'm just want you all to know that you really matter a lot to me in the dialogue. Yeah, do you feel better and warm and fuzzy?
Yes.
And so, you know, if there's conflicting calls and so on, I mean, I understand that once in a while, but basically we're here to do this job. And I actually think we should take the money so we feel like we got paid to do the job and we have to be here to do the job. But that's a whole nother thing. I also think that there's sometimes kind of a free for all aspect of the dialogue in regarding any particular topic among staff. And I think it'd be really great if we got to the discipline of staff makes the opening presentation or tells us what we want. We have discussion. We decide what the 2 or 3 most important things are to us about that, and then we have a vote. And that should really, I mean, I don't see staff as here to participate in our meeting as much as be informed by our meeting and give us information that we need.
Yeah, if I can make a comment on that, you know, one of the things that, you know, I'm certainly not an Elon Musk. I'm going to put it that way. You know, there's a danger, you know, maybe Elon Musk is smart enough that he knows everything that's going on in the organization. But, you know, as the staff increases, we have experts in the area. So, you know, I do want the experts to present in their expertise. So, for example, turning it over to Alyssa to present the dashboard is what I want to continue to do. There's 2 reasons for doing that, right? First of all, they're the experts. They're the ones that should be answering the questions. And secondly, they you know, they can take pride in their work, right? It's their work product. So, you know, so I do think we can be more organized, but I don't want to lose that flatness of the organization. You know, when we talk about, I like to think of this RACI model, who's responsible. When you give people the responsibility, you give them the authority, and they appropriately respond. And that doesn't mean you throw it over the wall. So, for example, I continue to take responsibility for Make Ready. I'm the logical person on the staff to take responsibility for Make Ready issues. But other issues, I've fully delegated, and I want those folks to take that responsibility for that full delegation.
I don't disagree with that, Christine, at all. But I think when we have, you know, it should be the case that when we have a discussion slated on the agenda, there is a point person.
Yeah. And again, you hold me accountable. And I think what you're talking about, yes, I agree that I have had a free-for-all. We will get away from the free-for-all, but I still want to I just want to make that point. I still want to hold the
Yeah,
experts
I
accountable.
interpret what Holly said is the expectation is fully staff will continue to present. And,
Right.
you know, here's the presentation, board will dialogue on it. I think part of it in the past has been when staff is, or when the board members are having dialogues, we'll have many people be jumping in and giving opinions. And I think point person that led the presentation should be interfacing a bit during the board discussion, but let the board talk.
Yep, I hear you. I think
Yeah.
that's where you're going. You know,
Yep.
I realize we've had a lot of interruptions. And we have a staff talked about that, and we're prepared to shut
Yeah.
that down.
Okay, is there anything else on board meeting content and things in the packets? And I don't plan to go through everything listed under the board meetings listed here, A through H. But that gives you a sense of what Christine and I will be talking about, whether we bring somebody in from the governor's office, from the auditor's office for presentations. I want to involve more than just the CUDs. I want to be hearing from others, legislators, including Laura, policymakers, the lawmakers in our camp.
You're not hearing from me enough, Patty?
No, we are totally hearing from you. We want more.
That
addition
I
to
would
what-
add that I would just add on there. I also think it's important that when we have testimony that's given in committees, that information either be forwarded or be available in a little, or in the packet or whatever. So, the board is aware that testimony has been given and what was said, if there are presentations that are given.
Yeah,
You
That's a
know,
great
Laura, I knowing that the staff is probably making pretty complex presentations, it would be maybe enough to say, have a roster of presentations made generally, and what committee and what the open question is or the bill is, and then a summary, a couple of sentences, because I think we could be having board books that are pretty darn heavy.
I guess it would be my hope that there won't be that much testimony. And
Yeah,
also,
okay.
Yeah, but if you don't mind me interrupting,
you could just link to the testimony that's usually posted on a committee page.
Yeah.
Like we gave testimony on X day, here it is.
Okay, great.
yeah, thank you, because I was worried about it ahead of time, because they, for example, JITAC, we didn't get the agenda until 24 hours ahead of time, right? So we scramble for these committee meetings because they under state policy, they only have to give us their agenda 24 hours ahead of time. So they do that, and then we scramble to put the presentation together, and then in the next 24 hours. Like, for example, JITAC, they wanted it by 5 p.m. yesterday, but they didn't tell us till the last minute on the day before. So we were scrambling all day yesterday, just pulling that all together. But if you're saying after the fact and notification, of course, as soon as we have it ready to present and send it in, we can copy the board. That's not a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really Matt. I think Patty should always be copied anyway, but just, if there's something that we should be aware of, something that's contentious, we certainly should be aware of that. And I'm fine. I was as frustrated as you with that JITAC agenda. So, after the fact, I think is fine as, a report. Well, for me, it is.
Yep. Okay.
And I'll pledge to work with Christine on like an approach to presenting summaries of presentations made to legislative committees and other areas with enough, here's what was presented, here's a couple of lines of summary, links to presentations, and that way we can read as much as we want or as little as we want and stay informed. And it's a great way to keep us up to date on what's going on. Okay, it is 1:39. I have a hard stop at 2, so let's keep plowing through. The next item on our agenda is evaluation of the executive director. I'm not planning to evaluate you, Christine, today publicly.
Oh,
That's
good,
not
thank
the
you.
intent of today. I'm
Oh,
just
shoot, I
letting-
brought my notes.
I want to let everybody know that before the end of the year, I want to sit down with Christine and have an evaluation of, as we're, what things to, compliments and recognition of the past, and what things to improve on in the future. There should be no secret to anybody. I'm going to reach out to all board members with a brief survey to help stimulate some dialogue. And I just want to make it very public that this is what we're going to do. I'd also like to reach out to VCUDA and get their input. Rob, I'm going to give you a heads up that I'm going to send some info to you to gather some data. So I'll be doing that over the next month. So expect to see something, and I encourage everybody to give me feedback so that I can represent to Christine not just one person's perspective, but a body group of us, our perspective. So be on the lookout for that. And in addition,
go ahead.
In addition, I think as board members, we should be evaluated. I would like staff to give us feedback on what we're doing well and not so well, what we can improve on. So this is a two-way street so that we can work effectively together. I'll work with Christine to come up with some sort of survey instrument for the staff to give feedback on. And then at some point, we'll get that information back from Christine. So this should be a two-way dialogue. Holly, hand up.
This is not directed to any particular person at this time. It's just a comment. I have been in a couple of public settings where there's been kind of references to the board itself or our meetings or to staff members in public settings that were in the nature of a review. So commentary about opinions about whether or not we function well, don't function well, whatever. I'm really hopeful with the institution of this review process. No one would find it necessary to not be supportive of their colleagues outside that rubric of doing formal review. I think it's really important that staff support the board publicly and vice versa. And because I have examples to the contrary, I just feel compelled to say it out loud. Thanks.
Thank you, Holly. Yes, having a unified team is super important. We may have individual differences of how we want to do something or approaches or style. It is what it is, but that's not something that you should be talking about. You should support your leaders. We should support staff. And you don't air your dirty laundry out in public. Just put it that way. It doesn't mean we always agree on stuff, but that's an important message to frame. We're not all perfect. In fact, I'll be the first one to state I'm not perfect. But we're all good people and trying to push the ball forward and trying to do good for the state. And I think all of our hearts are in it in the right way. And with that, we've got a great group of people. All right, any other comments? Okay, let's turn it open to public comment then. Plenty of time.
Anyway, Rob, you manage this for us?
Sure. If you want to give public comment, please raise your hand and we'll recognize you and turn your video on and you could speak. So far, I don't see anybody with their hands up.
Yeah, this takes a few minutes sometimes, so let's give them a little bit of uncomfortable silence.
Hey, Laura.
Yeah, I apologize, Patty. I couldn't come off mute. Just back to the review process, talking about that being a two-way street. Just introduced as a concept. I don't know if people would hate this or not. Doing a gap analysis. So having Christine rate herself as well as the board so that Christine and we can see where the biggest gaps are, and that could be for the board as well. So just a concept to throw out there. And hoping that the staff will also be engaged in some way in an evaluation of the process. I'm not sure how that'll be.
Well, I think you can expect from me, I'll give a collective response from the staff, certainly, like anything else, we have different personalities on staff, so I'll summarize that.
Very excellent. All right, any other comments? Anybody from the public?
Yeah, we don't see public hands, we begin with.
Hey, Stan, I'm going to take this opportunity to say that I'm sorry, I've been really busy, but I will contact you.
And do we have any Vacuda comments? That can also happen in this section, I guess. Okay, I don't see anyone.
Okay, all right.
Thank you all, nice job. Got
No
through this.
worries about packing up a few minutes early.
Yeah.
Okay, we
Well
are
done.
on. We are on for our next meeting of November 14th at noon. So we will see everybody at noon on the 14th. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.